Improbable as it may have been, LSU rallies and beats South Carolina 36-33. We're talking about it. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Glad to have you aboard with us here. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe, smash a like button, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU. LSU survives. They beat South Carolina 36-33, and I want to delve into it. We will get to the game in just a quick second, but I want to start with a big picture overview of this game. It reminded me a lot of Missouri from a year ago. LSU played about as pitiful a football game as you could imagine in every phase: offense, defense, special teams. They were atrocious. And despite the fact that they were atrocious, they were in the game, made plays to make it a game at the end of the first half, found a way to gain control in the second half, and ultimately found a way to win. I've done this job for a long time, a very long time. This is my 18th season covering LSU. And over the course of covering a team and not thinking and watching through the prism of a fan, but as someone who's trying to analyze what I see, it gives you a different temperament. So I take a lot of pride in the fact that I tend not to overreact to things. I'll give you an example. A year ago when LSU lost to Florida State in the opener, if you would have gone into our postgame show, my Twitter, anything that I dealt with, the fan reaction I got, overwhelmingly, the fan reaction after LSU lost to Florida State a year ago, 45-24, Jaden Daniels isn't the guy. It's comical now, but that was a fan sentiment a year ago. As it turned out, Jaden Daniels was the only thing you had going for you a year ago when you had the worst defense in the history of the program. 3rd and 1, Daniels was a problem because he could run it. 3rd and 9, Daniels was a problem because he could run it, hand it off, or throw it. Jaden Daniels was awesome. You know that now. And a lot of you know who you are. I don't need to call you out, but you know who you are. So, look, I don't mean to isolate it just to a year ago. So when LSU lost to Southern Cal, I looked at that game and went, it was a 50-50 game. Two very similar teams. It was a tie ball game until the final 8 seconds. And you can point out all the things that went wrong. Self-inflicted wounds, foolish penalties. You miss a throw in the red zone that could have been a touchdown. It's a close game against a good team, evenly matched teams, hard-fought game, clean game. You lost. It happens. I wasn't going to overreact to it. Similarly, with Nichols a week ago, I wasn't going to overreact to that because I get it. I've told you, how many times have you seen really good football teams just go through a malaise against lesser opponents? It's the danger of having those opponents. Ask Notre Dame, they lost a home game to Northern Iowa after going all out in their opener, beating A&M in College Station at Kyle Field in a great football game, and they come home and they lay down against Northern Iowa because they weren't, or Northern Illinois because they weren't ready to play. It's part of it, man. So I didn't care. And I know people are going to magnify the 2 long touchdown drives in the first half that Nichols got, but you're ignoring the fact that LSU put Nichols in a chokehold in the second half like they should. They beat him 44-21. Yeah, they allowed a good FCS team to get a couple of drives against them. So, told you, man, 2011 LSU, greatest team before the 2019 team. They were in a 14-7 game against a 500 Western Kentucky team at half. LSU was so much better than them, but they pulled away late, and so did the team a week ago, so I didn't care. This game against South Carolina, this performance is inexcusable at every level. Brian Kelly, Joe Sloan, Blake Baker, all the assistants, the players, the veterans, the offensive line, the defensive line, the secondary, everybody inexcusable. It is inexcusable to know what was on the line after you slodged your way through that Nichols game, going on the road to play South Carolina. Game days there. They're going to be sky high after beating Kentucky. They should have gotten your attention. Clearly they didn't. Because at the start of that game, LSU looked like they couldn't give a rip. South Carolina took the opening kickoff. By the way, hat tip Brian Kelly for finally deferring, which was the right call. Talk about that here in just a quick second. But Carolina took the opening drive and went 7 plays, 75 yards, right down your throat. And the unfortunate part about it, they didn't do anything special. The first play of the game, Lenora Sellers is so incapable of throwing the football. Like I told you all week, all they did was raise up and dump a little ball to the right side of the tight end. Who's right there? Harold Perkins, Johnny on the spot, speeding up right at the line of scrimmage. Could have dropped the tight end for a tackle for loss. What did he do? Missed the tackle, 17 yards. After that, a 6-yard run, a 10-yard completion, an 11-yard run, an incompletion on a terrible pass by Lenora Sellers because he can't throw. 2nd and 10, you allow a 27-yard run. And on 1st and goal from the 4, Lenora Sellers runs it in for a touchdown. Just like that, you're down 7-0. All right, let's see what the LSU offense can do. 3 and out, and then you punt, shank it, 39 yards. And before you know it, you blink and you're down 17-0 to a bad football team. There is no excuse for Brian Kelly to not have this team ready to play. The fact that you showed up against an inferior opponent. By the way, that was an inferior opponent. Do not get it twisted. You won the game despite being down 17-0. Despite the fact that at the end of the first quarter, listen to me. At the end of the first quarter, you had 7 yards of offense. 7 at the end of the first quarter. You were outgained 135-7 at the end of the first quarter. And you won the game. You outgained them and won the game. You were the better team. You are the physically superior team. And still, you found yourself down 17-0 because you weren't prepared. And that is 100% on coaching, on plan, on preparation, on all of it. And it's inexcusable. It is inexcusable that you were down 17 and that you found yourself in a total dogfight until literally the final seconds of the game where they had to miss a field goal for you to win. I'm going to go through the game in just a second. But this is one thing I'll say that's a glass half full approach. If you're upset today, you should be. I have been measured to this point. I have been willing to allow them to play through it, to grow, to get better, to see how they do. They started 7 different guys in different spots today. Deshaun Spears, the freshman, started at safety. Harold Perkins started at star. You saw Ahmad Bro start at defensive tackle. You saw Zai Alexander start at corner. You saw a giant shuffle today. Rightfully so on the defensive side. But here's the one thing I'll tell you. If you're looking for a glass half full, this is it. I don't care if you're the 2019 LSU Tigers or the worst team in the history of college football. Over the course of a 12-game season, every team will play its best game and its worst game at some point. And it all looks different. For example, 2019 LSU, Auburn, worst game they played all year. Derek Stingley muffed a punt. You struggled in the red zone to convert touchdowns. And that ended up being a closer game than it should have been. You watch the game, you look at the box score, LSU dominated the game up and down the field. But it was the worst game they played all year. Every team plays its bet. This is objective fact. Play a season, look back and say, that was our best game, that was our worst game. Here's what you hope if you're LSU. Here's what you hope. I don't know if this is the case, by the way. Be very clear. I don't know if this is the case. This is what you hope. You hope that on Saturday, you played your worst game of the year against South Carolina and you managed to win. Because what can't be lost is that you did win the game. So mathematically, everything we talked about going into this game is still in play. You beat South Carolina. Next week, you beat UCLA. You beat South Alabama. You have your open date. Hopefully, you improve. You get healthy. You got a home game against Ole Miss. And hopefully, you play your best game on that Saturday against what will likely be an undefeated Ole Miss top 10 team, maybe top 5 team. You find a way to win it in your best game. And now the second half of your season plays out. Everything is in line for you to play out like you hoped it would. This isn't new to Brian Kelly's teams. Happened a year ago. This is exactly what happened a year ago against Missouri. You played a miserable football game on the road at 11 a.m., by the way. You got a game-changing play at the end of the first half when Harold Perkins came away with an interception. You got to stop at the end of the first half when Harold Perkins blocked, end of the second half, first possession of the second half, Harold Perkins blocked a field goal. You managed to find your way back in to get enough stops. Your offense got going, and you wound up winning a close game. You probably shouldn't have won. Same thing happened on Saturday. You found a way to win a game you probably shouldn't have won. And that team a year ago finished 9-3. This team right now is 2-1. You got 2 very winnable games ahead of you. Can you get them? You got to be a lot better, a whole lot better than you were. You're going to have to be a whole lot better than you were Saturday against South Carolina in one of the most horrendous outings you could possibly imagine. Inexcusable the way that game played out. That should have never been a game. Regrettably, we'll go through some of it as we continue. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Glad to have you aboard with us here, and glad to tell you about our friends over at Robinhood, a great sponsor here of Locked on LSU, your team every day. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial flavors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Also brought to you today by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style. eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. I want to run through the game real quickly. I'm not going to go through it in painstaking detail. Every time I chart a game, I'll hold up my notebook for those who are watching on YouTube. I chart every play of the game. And at the top of the page, I have good, bad, and then notable things during a half. There's 2 columns of bad in the first half, as opposed to just a few things on the good. But as bad a first half as you can imagine. You get down 7-0, you go 3 and out, you shank a punt, they get the ball. Thankfully, as they're driving, Lenora Sellers, because he's a bad quarterback, threw an inexcusable interception in the end zone that Zy Alexander came down with. Tigers get the ball, they would end up punting. South Carolina would get the ball, drive down the field, you'd bow up, force a field goal in the red zone. You're down 10-0. Tigers would get the ball back, You'd have a punt blocked, would lead to a one-play touchdown drive, and just like that, you're down 17-0 early in the second quarter. And at that point, LSU got it together. They put together a touchdown drive, largely on the back of Caden Durham, who came up on 3rd and 9, by the way. 3rd and 9, came up with a touchdown run. Beautiful run. Brian Kelly has said it. At some point, someone was going to have to, the running backs have scholarships too. At some point, someone was going to have to make a guy miss or break a tackle. Caden Durham did that throughout the game. He gets you within 17-7. Then you force a fumble. And unfortunately, despite taking over at their 18-yard line, you settle for a field goal. But it's 17-10. South Carolina gets the ball at 4:28, and this is where deferring comes into play. You're thinking, get a stop, get points before the end of the first half, score to start the second half. You got the lead, then they're playing from behind the entire second half. But you couldn't get a stop. One play, Lenore Sellers went 75 yards. Listen, I know a lot of you are going to talk about LSU's run defense. The bottom line is, against Nichols, LSU's run defense was good. Against South Carolina, LSU's run defense was good. What they can't do is prevent the big play. Consistently, you got run stuffs. Unfortunately, you keep allowing the busted play. And on the 75-yarder, the freshman Ahmad Bro got his face mask into an offensive lineman, completely lost where he was. Whit Weeks was blitzing, and Sage Ryan, for a safety, for a senior safety, to get crossed up the way he did, not even put a hand on Lenore Sellers, inexcusable. 75 yards, and in a blink, you're down 14 again. Now, thankfully, Garrett Nussmeier did Garrett Nussmeier things, led the Tigers right down the field. C.J. Daniels, 18-yard reception. Aaron Anderson, 23-yard reception. He was awesome today, by the way. Awesome on Saturday. C.J. Daniels, another 20-yarder. Then Kyron Lacey, his first reception of the day, was the touchdown pass. But wasn't good enough because LSU had to go have an errant snap and botch the PAT. So instead of being within 7, you're down 8 at the half. It's 24-16. And to start the second half, you get the ball. Because this is why you defer, to have the opportunity to go back-to-back, end of the first half, start of the second. So you're down 8, you get the ball, and you go right down the field. You figured it out. I told you. At the end of the first quarter, LSU was down 7-0 and had been outgained 135-7. In the second quarter, LSU outgained South Carolina 162-130. You were finding your groove, and it continued in the third quarter. You go right down the field to start the second half, and you end up on the 1-yard line, and you go for it. It's 3rd and goal from the 1. You run Josh Williams. He gets stuffed. On 4th and goal, you try to throw a pass to Josh Williams in the flat, but the pressure comes in. Nussmeier has to rush it, and Williams is short. I hate the decision not to kick a field goal there. It's an 8-point game. The point of the game is points. The objective is points. It's not yards. It's not time of possession. It's points. I said the same thing the opening game of the season against USC. When you ended up in the goal-to-go situation, you went for it, and you came away with nothing. The objective is points. Get points. And in that situation, you passed on 3. LSU would score on its next possession, go for 2 because they were down 2, miss it. In that situation, the field goal and the PAT, you would have been leading the game. Points are the objective. And too often LSU spits in the face of points, the opportunity to get points. You needed points in that situation, and you passed on it. But your defense was awesome at that point. They force a 3-and-out. They get the ball back. You go right down the field. Caden Durham scores his second touchdown of the game. You're within 2. You miss the 2-point conversion. South Carolina gets the ball. Boom. You force a 3-and-out. They punt. You're going to have great field position, except that you have an illegal blindside block. Special teams was atrocious. You muffed a snap. You had a punt blocked, which led to a touchdown. You had an illegal blindside block on a punt. You had a holding on a kickoff. You were atrocious on special teams. Brian Kelly continues to not have a special teams coordinator, and it is biting his team in the behind every year. 3 years in a row, you continue to be atrocious on special teams. Peyton Todd shanked a punt 39 yards when you needed a big one, and everything else I just said. LSU gets the ball back. They go down, they score, they take their first lead. This was Mason Taylor's touchdown. You're up 29-24, and you're feeling like, all right, here we go. First play of the fourth quarter was the 3rd and 2 was Mason Taylor's touchdown. First play of the fourth quarter, you got your first lead. It wouldn't last. 1, 2, 3 plays later, you're down. You allow a 66-yard touchdown run by Rocket Sanders. Completely inexcusable. Now, they went for 2, converted when Robbie Ashford was running around like crazy, and then ultimately they had a legal man downfield, so they moved him back, tried it again. Deshaun Spears came up with the interception, so you're down 130-29. But you're feeling good. Offense has been moving the ball. Offense moving the ball down the field. Like, look at LSU's drive. This is the thing that can't be lost. This cannot be lost with all of your disappointment and how the game went. After a terrible start for LSU, punt to start the game, you went touchdown, field goal, touchdown, downs at the 1-yard line, touchdown, fumble. That was when DJ Chester, who had a really rough game, snapped the ball early, hit Garrett Nussmeier in the chest. He fumbled it. Right after that, South Carolina got the ball and would kick. The great news there was your defense held them to a field goal. And there were moments in this game, 2 moments where your defense held Carolina to field goals instead of touchdowns when they were deep in your territory, which saved your opportunity to win this game. This defense isn't good, y'all. Far from it. They're not great. They're not even good. But in moments today, they came up when you needed them. And that was one of them. You forced a 3-and-out. They kicked a 42-yard field goal. They're up 4. Tigers got the ball. They punted. South Carolina fumbled. LSU would get the ball back. And after that fumble, you got the ball at their 12. And this is where you're feeling like, okay, you're down 4. You got the ball at their 12. There's 7:02. This is where you take the lead. You get a stop and you salt it away. Instead, Garrett Nussmeier throws an interception. It was returned for a touchdown, but you got bailed out by a personal foul because their veteran defensive end made a stupid decision to go hit Nussmeier and blindside block him, which allowed LSU to force a 3-and-out. You got the ball back. You went down, scored the game-winning touchdown. You win 36-33. It was an atrocious performance. It was ugly in every way. You were, as evidenced by the fact that you won the game, you played so awful in this football game. You had a punt block, which led to a touchdown. You muffed a snap on a PAT. You threw 2 pick sixes that ultimately got wiped away. You fumbled deep in your own territory. You were awful. 3rd and 1s you couldn't convert. You left points on the board at the 1-yard line. You had 2 possessions inside the 10 where you came away with 3 points. You were awful in this football game. Awful. And you found a way to win. Because you are a physically superior team. And that comes back to coaching, because this team was not prepared to play. I will credit them for making the adjustments, the necessary adjustments in game. I thought Joe Sloan's decision to start rolling the pocket, get Nussmeier in space, allow the passing game to open up. But there's 2 players you got to highlight today. One of them is Caden Durham. Caden Durham, 11 carries for 98 yards. He had a long of 26. He averaged nearly 9 yards a carry. He was 2 yards away from a 100-yard game, and he had 2 touchdowns. You've been looking for somebody to break a tackle, to make a guy miss, to give you something in the running game, and Caden Durham gave it to you. He deserves a ton of credit. And how about Aaron Anderson? Former 5-star transferred in from Alabama, was non-existent a year ago. In large part, look, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas gobbled up so many of the targets. Anderson was supposed to be your return guy, muffed one early in the season, never went back there and did nothing a year ago. 5 catches, 96 yards. He caught 5 of his 6 targets. He was great. Hat tip to Aaron Anderson. On a day where they did their best to take away Kyron Lace, even though Kyron had 5 for 63. Aaron Anderson was awesome. You needed somebody else to step up, and he was your guy. He was your guy on Saturday. Defensively, we talked about it so much, y'all. How Blake Baker's defenses had given South Carolina so much trouble. You probably don't even realize it, but LSU defensively had 5 sacks, 9 TFLs, 2 pass breakups, a quarterback hurry, and 4 forced fumbles. And despite that, you were sweating a field goal as time expired to see if you were going to overtime. I'll repeat now where we started. My hope for this team, my hope, the good news, the glass half full, is that you were awful on Saturday. Awful. And you won. You were awful and you won. Let's hope this is when Thanksgiving weekend comes and LSU plays Oklahoma in Tiger Stadium, we look back and say, man, that South Carolina game was the worst game this team played all year. If that's the case, they got a shot. Because if they play better the next 2 weeks, you'll beat UCLA, you'll beat South Alabama, you'll go into your open date, you'll get healthy, you have 2 weeks to prepare for Ole Miss. And if you manage to play your best game of the year, maybe you can win that one. In the same way that South Carolina, who, by the way, I don't know if you realize this, South Carolina, in the year of our Lord 2024, attempted 4 passes in the second half. They attempted 4 passes in the second half. That is an awful offensive football team. And you allowed them to put up 33 points. Why? Because you allowed a 66-yard touchdown, a 75-yard touchdown. You fumbled the football deep in your territory. You had a punt blocked and gave them a 10-yard touchdown run. That's why. Not because they went up and down the field. The only time all game that they went up and down the field on you was the opening possession when they went 7 plays, 75 yards. That was the only drive all day when they went up and down the field on you. Look at their scoring drives. Look at the scoring drives. 1 play, 10 yards. 1 play, 75 yards. 3 plays, 75 yards. That's their touchdown drives. They didn't move the ball up and down the field on you all day. You couldn't contain on run defense, on big plays. Now you know what you have to work on. We'll see if they can. You got 2 more games to figure out what ails you and then an open date to get healthy. And then you'll find out that second Saturday in October when Ole Miss comes in, if you're playing for anything of significance in the second half of the season. But the way they coached, prepared, and played on Saturday, hard for me to get there. I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt after a hard-fought game in Las Vegas against USC. I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt against Nichols because who really cares? After that trash show we saw in Columbia, South Carolina on Saturday, nobody is getting the benefit of the doubt anymore. They got to play better. They got to coach better. They got to be better prepared the rest of the way because there are landmines all over this schedule. You play that way against Ole Miss, you'll get embarrassed. You play that way at Texas A&M, who's blowing out Florida as I record this, you'll get embarrassed. You play that way against Alabama, you'll get embarrassed. You play that way against Oklahoma, 4 more losses on this schedule is very realistic. If you can't figure out a way to coach better and play better. The excuse making's over, y'all. And all y'all sitting here throwing your hands in the air saying, I told you, you're probably the same jokers that tried to tell me a year ago that Jaden Daniels wasn't the answer. You can lean toward glass half empty, glass half full, do whatever you want. I don't care. You do you. What I'm going to tell you right now is this team has talent. They've got a good quarterback. They have talented offensive linemen. They got a good young running back in Caden Durham. They got great receivers, and you're going to get Chris Hilton back. Defensively, you're not very good at all. You have the potential to get better as the season goes along, and maybe that can net you somewhere near something we sort of conceive as an acceptable season in Baton Rouge. If you don't, you're staring down the barrel 7-5. See if they get better. Starts this week with UCLA coming to town. All right, that's going to do it for us here. If you're on podcast, please subscribe. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day. That's the wrong button. My apologies. I got to hit the right one to end the show now. There it is.